So, as you all know that manual testing is a complete process oriented. We should know the process which we are following. So, did I explain anything, any concept yesterday? Nothing, right? So, this is going to be the
No,
official first session, right?
no, nothing.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So, in the real world, whenever you are working on our projects in a manual testing, people will be using certain terminologies. So, it's a mandatory for us, okay, it's mandatory for us to learn and understand the concept whatever we have in a manual testing. The reason is we have a very less practical implementation in our manual testing. Okay, very few practical implementations. Okay, so we have in a manual testing, so in which the first thing that we need to know is a software application. So what is a software application? We should know. The reason is in the real world, if you go on, if you attend an interview, the people will ask you a software application and a definition of a software application. Those things people will ask you. That's the reason we should know all the definitions. So what is a software application? Set of computer programs and minimum data to run those programs, we call it as a software application. So it means you need to write down a programs in the backend. Those programs will be performing certain operations. So for that particular reason, we call it as a software application. What is an example for this software application? WhatsApp Messenger, which we are using. So we are using a WhatsApp Messenger, right? Itself is a software application. Why are we calling it as a software application? They have written some logics in a backend, and if you perform certain operations on that, based on your input, respective actions will be performed on a WhatsApp. A best example is if you click on a chat icon on your WhatsApp, the chat history will be populated. If you click on a status icon, the status stuff will be displayed. If you click on a call icon, the call stuff related will be displayed. Settings related things will be displayed. So it means based on our actions, okay, based on our actions, respective stuff will be displayed, which we call it as a software application. To decide or to view this software application for us in the backend, developers will write down a code, and that's the reason you will be visible or you will be seeing this particular software application. Set of computer programs written, and to work on, you need to pass a minimum data. So for this WhatsApp Messenger, your selection is the minimum data, right? For suppose if at all you want to send it on a group that I have created, you just need to type in that message, right? That's what the minimum data you are passing, which we are calling it as a software application, guys. Is this clear for you all? What is a software application, or any questions for me on this? Satyender, Raj, and Satyender, Raj, and Deepa. Is it clear for you all, or any
Yeah, we are
question?
clear.
Yes, yeah, clear.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, clear.
And then next thing is, once we are done with this software application, generally the software application is a simple word, but internally it has some other meanings inside that, some other definitions inside that. What exactly the meaning is? The software application was broadly categorized into product and a project. What does it mean? What is a product and what is a project? What is the difference between these two? What we call it as a product and what we call it as a project, right? We should know basically. So a product means if a software application is designed for multiple customers. Okay, if this application is designed for multiple customers, we call it as a product. Whereas if a software application is designed for few customers, very few, limited set of audience. We call it as a project. See, the thing is, both are of a software applications itself. Whether it is a project or it is a product, you need to write down a code and a backend itself. But the thing is, the number of audience will vary. What is an example for that? See, guys, assume that we are working for IBM. Okay, so IBM will have an internal portal to apply leaves. Okay, apply leaves. Who can access this portal, guys? People who are working for IBM can only access this particular portal. See here, assume that Surendra is working for TCS. Will he able to access the portal created for IBM? Is it possible for Surendra to access the IBM portal? No, right?
No.
Or a simple example, guys. So assume that we have a two blocks. Block A. So this is a real building. Basically, consider that block A and a block B. In a block A, we have a TCS office, and in a block B, we have an IBM office. Okay. So assume that I'm working for Surendra, working for TCS, and Satyendra working for IBM. Okay, Sachendra working for IBM and Surendra working for TCS. So, will it be possible for Surendra to enter into Block B with his TCS ID card? Or will it be possible for Satyendra to enter TCS campus with his IBM card? No, right? This
No.
block A is precisely designed for TCS folks. So whoever are having a TCS ID cards itself, they can attend it. Else they can't attend that premises basically. The same with a block B also. This block B is precisely designed only for IBM employees. But the thing is, both the block A and the block B are for IT employees. See here, block A and a block B are IT employees. People who are working for TCS, we call it as an IT employees. People who are working for IBM, even we call them as an IT employees itself. But the only difference is their level of access. The similar way here also, project is designed only for few set of people. It doesn't mean that only 10 people or 20 people or 30 people will access it. If TCS is having a 10,000 employees sitting in that block A, that block is capable of 10,000 people, then it can access all the 10,000 people. The block A can be accessed by all the 10,000 people. The ultimate point here is project is not a restricted entity. So it was designed in such a way that it will be applicable only for few set of people itself, but still it's a software application. Whereas a product, it was a design for everyone. Example of a product is Gmail, which we are using, Yahoo Mail, which we are using, WhatsApp Messenger, which we are using. There is no restriction at all, basically. Whether I'm working for TCS, whether I'm working for IBM, everyone can access it. Consider that the block C is a shopping mall. It's open for everyone, right? Whether you are working for TCS, whether you are working for IBM, no matter, it doesn't consider basically. Whether you are working for either of these things, your block C is open for everyone. So this is, we call it as a product. Got it, guys? Product. If a software application is designed for multiple customers. Project, if a software application is designed for very few customers. So the objective is both are software applications itself, but the way people are using will differ. That's it. Any questions for me, guys? Deepa, Satyendra, and Virat?
No. No.
No,
We
sir.
got it. No, sir.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Okay. Good. Done the deal. And then the next point that we need to consider here is, okay, once after we had done up to this particular point, so this is what a software application. Why we need to know these definitions? Immediately a quick question will rise in our mind, buddy, why are you explaining this software testing or software application and all these definitions at this point? As said that Manual testing is a process oriented, and when you join any organization, they will ask you, are you done with the project deliverables or not? You should know what is a project, right? If you know this the definition, then whatever the terminologies they are using, you can easily understand that. Okay, you can easily understand that. So project means a software application, set of a computer programs, and a minimum data to work on it. We call it as a software application. And majority of the organizations in the real world will build a products itself. So it means they will target for almost everyone. They don't have any restricted entities. Yes. And once we are done up to here, the next point is a small example that I want to start with. So the example here is, assume that I want to construct a house. I want to construct a house. Okay. I just got a thought on 30/10/2021 at 9 a.m. IST. Will it be possible for me to complete my construction by 10 a.m. IST on the same day? No, right? It's not at all possible for me to complete my house construction within an hour or so, right? It needs a lot of activities involved. So what are all the activities involved in construction? So if you say the first one that we need to consider here is, okay, the first one that we need to consider here is choose a land and then purchase a land. And once after choosing a land and once after purchasing a land, then, okay, once you are done with these two activities, choose civil engineer. And once you are done with this civil engineer, then, sorry, before choosing the civil engineer, get a plan, get approval for it. Okay, then choose a civil engineer and give contract to him. And next, choose an interior designer, give contract to him. Okay, finally, housewarming. Right? On a high level, these are the 9 different steps which we have in order to complete a construction of a house. Any questions on this, guys?
No.
Good. So the ultimate point out over there is, if you want to complete a house construction, you need to do these things. Okay, for us, it's not so easy basically to complete any task. Okay, so whatever the things you are dealing with, it's not possible for us to complete anything. Assume that I want to purchase a car, and even it's not possible for me to get my car within an hour, though I'm ready to pay my money, ready to pay the full payment for that car, but I don't get the car in an hour or so. Based on the availability, based on the stock, it may take some time, right? Though we are ready to invest, sometimes it will take a more time to deliver, depending on a model and depending on a type, whatever we are choosing. The similar way here also, software application is a word. Okay, it is a process basically, and even it's not possible for any organization to complete their application development over a night. There are some series of activities which needs to be conducted, and upon completion of all these activities itself, a software application will be developed. So for us, in order to construct a house, if you see in detail, these many activities are there. The similar way, if you see in order to develop a software application also, there are a series of activities involved. So what are all the activities involved we have inside this developing a software application? We call it as an SDLC, which is a software development life cycle. STLC. In order to develop a particular software, what are all the various stages involved? We call it as an SDLC, which is a software development life cycle, guys. Okay, Perfect. So what are we going to do as part of this SDLC in any real world? So the SDLC is having various stages. So if at all you want to develop any application, that application should fall to should pass all these stages. So the first stage out over there is, okay, the first stage out over there for this SDLC is basically gathering of requirements, planning, design, development, testing, delivery, and a maintenance. Okay, gathering of requirements, the planning, design, development, testing, delivery, and a maintenance. These are all the various stages which we have in order to develop any particular software, guys. If you want to develop anything, it should follow all these stages. Okay, it should follow all these stages. Okay, let's see more details about this individual chunk. Okay, so let us start with gathering of requirements. The name itself will tell you gathering of requirements. So how this process is going to happen? Let me give you a simple example so that you can understand that. Okay, so assume that I want a designer wear dress for my marriage. Just an example. And I went to Manyavar. Okay, so whenever I approach this store, what it will happen? One person from the store will interact with me. Maybe, one person, a salesperson will interact with me, and he will try to understand what exactly my needs are. Based on that, he will suggest designs for me, right? This is what the process is going to happen. Whenever you approach any store, the salesperson will approach you, and that salesperson will give you a more details about the product. First of all, before that, he will gather all your needs. What is your budget? What are all the things you are looking for? All these details, he will gather a complete information from you, and based on your interest, he will show the various products, whatever they have. Right. The same way here, the gathering of requirements will be done from one company side, one organization side. What will this do? For suppose here Sachendra is there, and Satyendra wants to build a website. Okay, Satyendra wants to build a website, and maybe a training portal. Satyendra wants to build a training portal. Okay, this is what his need is, Satyen. Okay, so he approached Surendra. Surendra is a freelancer who will build websites. Okay, Surendra is a freelancer who builds various websites. So Sachendra approached Surendra that, buddy, I'm looking for a website for my training company. I just wanted these many courses. Then immediately what Surendra will do, he will understand all his needs, and then he will give a quotation. If Sachendra accepted for his quotation, then the further stages will fall, which is Surendra will gather the requirements. Right. So the simple thing is, for suppose this guy is in a dilemma whether to give this project to Surendra or not. Without having any clarity, for suppose if he approached Surendra and Surendra gathered the requirements, and if he started working, and after 1 week, this guy is not responding, then what it will happen? It's not going to be a value. The effort, whatever Surendra and his team kept, was went into a vain. Right. That's the reason there should be an official confirmation before proceeding with all the SDLC activities. Once after we have a confirmation from that particular customer, then officially we will start with the SDLC activities, which is a gathering of requirements. So from the company side, one person will interact with the customer and gather all the business needs from the customer. So what is your business need? What you are trying to achieve? What exactly you want? How you want to look your website? Do you have anything in your mind? Do you have any reference websites? All these details, all these details, Sachendra or the customer, one person from our organization will interact and will get all the details. Any questions for me on this so far, guys? The point here is, okay, so in the gathering of requirements, one person from our organization will go and interact with the customer first. He will gather what are all the customer needs, and he will list down all the customer needs, which officially we are calling that particular phase as an gathering of requirements. In the gathering of requirements, one person from our organization, usually we call that particular person as a business analyst, will interact with the customer and will gather all the customer needs. So gathering, he will list down in a document, and that document we call it as an business requirement specifications or a software requirement specification or a requirements document. That's what we call it as. Any questions on this particular first phase, which is a gathering of requirements, everyone?
No.
Yes. And we have gathered the requirements from the customer, and we are good. What exactly we know, basically what exactly customer is looking from our organization side. Okay, so once we have all the needs, then we need to prepare a plan. So if you have a plan, and then only you can follow that plan to accomplish your task in an effective way. See, the two things are here. Let me come up with a small example so that you can understand in a more easier way. So basically, so assume that Satya and Ramya are friends, and both have a December, office shutdown time. Okay, shutdown time is there for them. So complete December month is time off. Okay, it's a paid off for them. So they were planning for a vacation. What Satya has done in the month of October itself, as he know basically December is a complete time off, he has listed down what are all the places he needs to visit, how exactly he need to book the accommodation, what is the travel, and he almost booked everything for his vacation in this October month itself. And Ramya also wants to go to the same place, but she didn't prepare any chunk out over there. Like nothing is there with her. So at the end, as is a festival time off or errand time off, so it will be difficult for this girl to complete her vacation. And even she didn't get even a single flight ticket, and she didn't went to a vacation also. But as he has a planned effectively his trip, whatever he planned for, he completed all the places visit. Okay, so the only difference between Satya and Ramya, if you clearly observe here, whoever is having a proper plan and a vision, they can complete their task in an effective way. The same thing applies here also. If we want to build a software application, it's not going to happen overnight. So there should be a lot of activities happening, and there should be a thorough handover between one stage to another stage, followed by a detailed planning. Followed by a detailed planning should happen. Okay, so if this is the case, then only we can achieve that particular activity. That's the reason, as part of this planning phase, we will be preparing a detailed plan and approach for the complete application under test. Whatever the things you want to test, how exactly you want to test, how you need to deal with this activity, everything we will prepare a detailed plan. Who are all the resources going to work on a project? What are all the technologies we are going to work on a project? Everything we will prepare a detailed plan in this particular phase. Okay, is this planning clear for you all? What we will be doing? So, what are all the technologies we are going to use? Who are the workers? Who are all the team is going to work on a project? Who are all the developers? Who are all the testers going to work? Everything we will discuss as part of this particular planning phase itself. Okay, a detailed and a high level plan will be prepared for testing the entire application. Got it, everyone? Any questions?
Yeah, I got it.
Good, done the deal. So one thing, so the point is in the planning phase, the managers will prepare a detailed plan for testing or for developing the complete application. So what is the plan for us to develop this? Who are all the resources going to work on this project? So what are all the things? Everything we will be discussing as part of this planning phase itself. And once we are done with this planning phase, then the next and a most important thing that comes into the picture is a design phase. So what are we going to do as part of this design phase? In the design phase, we will be preparing a detailed design of a entire application. So what exactly the design means? Let me tell you a simple example. You are using Amazon.com. You know about Amazon or a Flipkart or Snapdeal, whichever the e-commerce applications are there. We know all those things, right? So Amazon. So on this Amazon, do you think that it's a simple website which is displaying just the products and we can purchase here? Or it's a kind of a complex stuff involved in a backend. The reason is, see here, basically around 45 million products are there. Okay, okay, we have too many products are there in an Amazon. It's not possible for them to maintain it as a simple website. It's a huge website which has lots and lots of data and lot of complete user sets of information, and which is a kind of a complex information. And that too, if you are entering any product, for suppose if you are entering any product, complete product details we are getting in a fraction of seconds. Just within a second we are getting the product details. So it means in the backend there are too many activities involved in a backend for this particular application. So all these things will be considered in a design phase, which we are considering as an architecture of the application. Okay, the application architecture. What are all the sub modules involved in the application? Okay, from where we are getting the data, how far we are passing the data, where we are storing down the information. All these details we will see as part of this application architecture. Okay, as part of this application architecture we will see. And later in the design phase we have another design also. The thing is, on a home screen, how exactly the Amazon home screen looks like, we will prepare a design and we will share it with the customer. But if this is how your home screen looks like, is that okay for you or it's not okay for you? We will get a feedback from the customer. Assume that Sachendra is having a requirement for this Lucky Trainings website, which is a luckytrainings.in. This is what a website that Sachendra is looking for. For this particular website, how it looks like. Okay, how exactly it needs to looks like. See, this is the home screen, how it needs to looks like, and this is middle screen. These are the various chunks, how exactly it needs to look like. We will prepare a prototype and we will prepare a prototype and we will share that particular prototype with the customer, and based on his approval we will proceed further with the complete developments. Okay, we will proceed further with the complete developments out over there. Okay, with a complete development out over there. So the point out over here is, in the design there will be an application architecture design. Followed by that particular application architecture, we should have another design. Okay, we should have another design, which is, in this design phase we need to design. Okay, in this particular design we will be designing the user interface of that application, how the application user interface looks like. All those things we are going to consider as part of this design phase. Got it, guys? Are any questions for me on this, everyone? how the design looks like and what is the design phase. Satyendra, Deepa, and
Yeah, got
Raj.
it. Yeah, got it.
Good. And then development. Say the developer has a requirement how the application should work, and they have a design how the application looks like. Then immediately they will start with their coding and they will start with the development. And once after developer confirms that, buddy, I'm done with this login functionality, then immediately we as a testers will verify whether login functionality is working in all the ways or not. Okay, as a tester we need to think out of the box and we need to test it in all the combinations whether the application is working or not. We as a testers will do. And once after the testing is completed, finally the delivery and the maintenance. This delivery and a maintenance, what are we doing means, as part of this delivery and a maintenance, we will be dealing with a complete delivery to the customer. And if at all the customer is looking for support from our end, we will be giving him a support as well, which falls under a maintenance phase, A best example for this kind of a training portal, what Sachendra's requirement is, once after the development is completed, Surendra, whenever I will give you a course, you need to add those courses to the website. That's what Sachendra will give a requirement to me, and I will work on that particular requirement accordingly. Got it, guys? Are any questions for me on this? Any questions, guys? Everyone?
Yeah, got it.
Satyendra and Raj?
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
So these are about a software development life cycle stages. These are the various stages whatever we have in order to develop an application. The first stage is gathering of a requirements. So first we will gather the requirements from the customer. Okay, so what exactly he's looking from us, we will gather the requirements. Okay, we will gather the requirements, and once after gathering the requirements, then we will go with the planning also. And once the planning is done, then we will go with the design phase. Okay, then we will go with the design phase. Okay, in the design phase we will prepare a high level design, and the design, okay, of the application will be prepared. And once after the design is done, then the developer will focus on a development. And once the development activity is completed, the tester will comes into the picture and he will test the application. And once tester certifies that, we will deliver the application to the customer. And if he need, we will go for a maintenance phase, and it's not a compulsory that every project will run into a maintenance phase. Good enough. Done the deal. Any questions for me so far, or you are good? So I hope it's clear for you all. Then once we are done up to this software development life cycle, so there is an opportunity or there is an option for us to customize these SDLC activities in developing an application. So what exactly that means? We can, we can customize in such a way that, okay, we can customize in such a way that we can complete the construction within a month. We can complete the construction within a 2 months or 3 months, depending on a budget. We can customize that construction. Okay, so the same thing is going to happen here. Depending on a project need, we can develop that particular application. Okay, depending on a project need, we can develop that particular application and we will deliver it to the customer. Okay, good, done the deal. So with that note, this is all about a software development life cycle. And once we are done with this software development life cycle, then the next point that we need to consider here is error or a mistake, defects, issue, incident, and defect, issue, incident, and a bug. And the last one is a failure. First of all, before jumping on all these things, I just want to give you two definitions. What is an expected behavior and what is an actual behavior? Okay, so I will give you a small example so that you guys can understand this concept. I assume that I have booked a flight ticket from Hyderabad to Bangalore. Okay, and the flight was supposed to arrive in a Hyderabad airport at 8:05 a.m. IST. Okay, this is what the flight was supposed to arrive at an airport. On that day, when I was traveling, I got a flight at around 12 p.m. IST. Okay, so here immediately a quick question will rise in our mind. How would I know the flight was supposed to arrive at 8:05? So, as per Indigo, they have a given that specifically this flight, which is moving from Hyderabad to Bangalore, it will be at a 5 a.m. So it means this is what given from an Indigo itself. This is what an given behavior, which we are considering it as an expected behavior. Okay, and so this is what on that day we got a flight. This we call it as an actual behavior. On that day we got a flight at that particular time. So whenever we are going on that day, what exactly the time we got it, we consider it as an actual behavior. So the thing is, when you will get the actual behavior, until you go to the airport, you don't know when your flight will come. Right. So if my flight is tomorrow, I need to wait till tomorrow. Then only I can know how what exactly my actual time is. But expected time before booking a flight ticket itself, I can see it in an Indigo official website that this is what an expected behavior is. So the bottom line is expected behavior, we can find it from the initial needs itself. The actual behavior, whenever you are verifying it, or whenever you are at that situation, then only you will get that actual behavior. All right, that's the difference between these two. So the point here, if we switch on back to the previous definitions, whatever we have, defect, issue, incident, or a bug, all these four are one and the same. If there is a deviation between expected result or a expected behavior and an actual result or an actual behavior. So it means if the expected and an actual is not one and the same, we call it as a defect, issue, incident, or a bug. All these are one and the same. If both are not same, we call it as a defect, issue, incident, or a bug. Okay, what does it mean? So for us, we will be focusing on an application requirements itself. For us, what is this expected result? So this expected result, we will get it from the requirements document. Okay, this expected behavior, we will get it from the requirement. Once the customer has given a requirement for us, stating that if something needs to come, we call it as an expected behavior. Whereas an actual result, whenever you are testing the application, so whenever we are testing the application, at that particular point of time, you will come to know this actual behavior. Okay, you will come to know this particular actual behavior. Is this point clear for you all, or any questions between the expected and an actual behavior? I will give you another small example so that you guys can understand more clearly. The requirement here is Gmail login functionality. As a user, if you enter valid username comma valid password, you will get inbox page. This is what an given requirement is, from which the expected behavior is inbox page should display whenever you enter a username and a password which is of a valid. What is an actual result? When you will get it? Whenever you are testing the application, if you are testing the app, and if you enter a valid username, valid password, and then you will come to know whether this inbox page is coming or not. If inbox page is coming or not, okay, whatever the screen it's coming, we call it as an actual result. Okay, inbox is coming or not is an actual result, guys. Okay, if expected and an actual both are same, It's not a defect. If expected and actual both are not same, we call it as a defect. Is this example clear for you all? Deepa, Satyendra, and Raj?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see.
Let me show you a simple example on this so that you guys can understand this concept more clearly. Okay, so here is a search functionality. So this search functionality on this website will work in such a way that, let me give you a requirement. Okay, so here the requirement is, if you enter any QA related course in search and click on a search button, that the course screen or the course should display. Okay, if I enter Selenium, the search results related to Selenium display. If I enter QTP related to search results will display. What is my expected behavior, guys? What is the expected result? Respective course should display as per search keyword. So if I'm giving a Selenium result should display. If I'm giving a YouTube, Google, something related should display. When you will get the actual result, whenever a developer confirms that, buddy, I have implemented this search functionality, go and test it. Then you will get it. As of now, developer confirms that the search functionality is implemented. So now I'm searching for Selenium. I entered Selenium and I clicked on a search now. Whatever the result it is populating, we call it as an actual result. So what is your expected result? Course should display. What is your actual result, guys? Page not found 404. Let me list down my actual result. Page not found 404. This is what my actual result is. Whether these two are same or these two are a differ. Is expected and actual result one and the same, or these two are differ?
Different.
We call it
Both
as
are
defects or
whatever
a bug
defective are.
or an incident or an issue. We call it as a defect, bug, or an issue or an incident. Is this example clear for you all, or any questions on this, guys? What is a defect?
Yeah, got it.
Okay, perfect. Done the deal. And then the next one is error or a mistake. Okay, so what exactly error or a mistake? An incorrect human action that leads to problem in the application. So a human being will do a small mistake that may lead to a problem in an application. An example, business analyst might have a captured a wrong requirement. If he have a captured a wrong requirement, the complete development will happen for a wrong application and customer will not accept it, which we call it as a defect, which we call it as an error. For suppose developer, while developing the application, he may miss certain conditions or certain stuff, which we call it as an error or a mistake. Okay, a human might be doing a small incorrect action, which we are calling it as an incorrect human action, which we are calling it as an error or a mistake. Whereas the last definition is a failure. If customer identifies that issue, we call it as a failure. Okay, if a customer is identifying that particular issue, we call it as a failure, guys. Okay, if the customer is identifying that particular issue, we treat it as a failure. For suppose we have a developed application and we tested the application and we delivered the application to the customer, and now customer is identifying the issue, we treat it as a failure. Depending on the type of issues, okay, we will be focusing, and the failures are also having a various impacts on an application. We need to do an impact analysis and all those things that need to be carried, which can be covered as part of a different sessions, guys. But for now, this is what the topic is. Is there the three definitions clear for you all, or any questions for me on this, guys? Everyone?
Yeah, we are clear.
Perfect. Done the deal, guys. So now let's take a pause here for today. Okay, so we'll continue a definition, which is a software testing. So what exactly a software testing is? It is the process of verifying, are we developing the right product or not, and validating whether the developed product is right or not. So here, as part of this software testing, you are doing certain things here. So software testing is a combination of verification plus validation. Verification means at the time of a development, if you are cross-checking whether we are developing the appropriate app or not, we call it as a verification. And validation means once after this development is completed, whatever the things we have developed, whether it is working as per the expectation or not, we treat it as a validation. So software testing is a combination of a verification and a validation. This verification, we can also call it as a static testing, and this validation, we call it as a dynamic testing. Okay, static testing and as well as a dynamic testing. That's it. Good enough. Any questions here on this? What exactly is static and as well as a dynamic testing? Now, the next point here is this static testing. It's saying that are we developing the right product or not? So at the time of a development, if you are cross-checking whether you are developing an appropriate product or not, we are just validating or verifying as part of this verification. Okay, good. If that's the case, then what we need to do here is, okay, this verification, a simple example is, recently I joined an organization and I need to send an email to my senior manager. So before sending an email, I will cross-check multiple times the content, whether I'm addressing the complete content or not, whether I'm dealing with all these things, whether I have covered everything or not. If I am cross-checking these things multiple times, we call that particular stuff as an verification. You use it to do this kind of a verification, right? So that's what we treat it as an verification. Okay, good. So in the real world, whenever you are working on the projects, it's mandatory for us to verify it. Okay, it's a mandatory for us to verify this particular thing. Good enough, done the deal. And then the next point that we need to consider here is this static testing will be categorized into reviews and as well as a walkthroughs. Review means examining or cross-checking, examining or cross-checking project related works. Whichever the project related works are there, if we are cross-checking that project related works, we call it as a review. And a walkthrough means once after we develop the application and assume that not exactly the developed application, assume that I'm on a project from 3 years and recently you joined the firm. So I will share knowledge to you. Whatever the knowledge I have on the project, if I'm sharing that knowledge with you, that particular thing, we call it as a walkthrough, or we can also call it as a knowledge transferring sessions. Okay, we call it as a knowledge transferring sessions, guys. Okay, good enough. So the point out over here is a walkthrough or a knowledge transfer sessions means if someone is having any idea on the product and if he is explaining more about that particular product, we call it as a review or a walkthrough. Sorry, a walkthrough. Whereas a review comes under which examining or a cross-checking the project related work. Whatever the project related work is there, if you guys are cross-checking that project related work, we call it as a reviews. Then this review was again broadly categorized into multiple types. Depending on a project need, this review was categorized into multiple types. So what are all those types this review was categorized? So let us see. The first review is a code review. Assume that, okay, assume that I'm a developer and even you are a developer. Okay, assume that we both are developers. Surendra and Sweta, assume that they both are developers. Once after, okay, Surendra has prepared the code. If Ramya or some other developer is reviewing his code base, we call it as a code review. So I prepared my code, someone else in my team is reviewing that particular code base, which we call it as a code reviews. And a formal review. So what is a formal review? Formal review. If a review is conducted with a pre-plan and with a systematic procedure followed by proper documentation. If something is lagging, if you are documenting that particular thing, this whole process, we call it as a formal review. If your review is conducted with a pre-plan, there is a plan for that, and there is a systematic procedure for that. And if something is missing, we are doing a proper documentation. This whole chunk, we call it as a formal review. An example for this, the formal review is year-end financial audits. Usually we know every year at the end of a financial year, basically the audits will be conducted, and on these financial audits, so what it will happen means precisely they will review only few sets of documents itself, and if the document some content is missing, they will list out. So there is a pre-plan for that financial reviews. They will follow a systematic procedure one after another. And if something is missing, they will detailedly document it, which we call it as a formal review. And the next one is an informal review. If a review is conducted without a pre-plan and systematic procedure, okay, if there are nothing, basically if you are not following any plan, if you are not following any systematic procedure, if you are not following anything, we call it as an informal review. On a random basis we will review something and we will share our review over the verbally. Basically we will share our inputs to the folks verbally. There's a whole process, we call it as an informal review. Okay, the formal review and informal review are a quite opposite things. In a formal review, a detailed documentation and a systematic procedure and a proper plan will be there in a formal review, which will not be the case in an informal review, guys. Good. And then a code review, as I have mentioned, the code review means one developer will be reviewing your code base. And the next one is a technical reviews. So this kind of a technical reviews will be conducted within a team where the resources will discuss about the skill set or the tools, whatever they want to use for that particular projects. Okay. So whatever the tools they want to use for that particular project, they will discuss. Assume that the customer is having an automation requirement and they don't have what exactly the tool they need to use. So we will conduct a technical review, and in which we will specify, okay, we will conduct a review and we will specify or we will discuss, if I use this particular tool, what is the advantage? If I use this particular tool, what exactly the advantages, limitations, all these things we will be discussing as part of this technical reviews. Good. Any questions on this of a review? Okay, the last type of a review which we have is a management review. So what is this management review? these reviews will be conducted by a higher level management to check whether the project is on track or not. Basically, assume that we will have some deliverables in a project. We have some deliverables to complete it by end of this month. Whether we are on a track in meeting those deliverables or not, we are going to verify as part of these reviews. Okay. So this point, we call it as an management reviews. So management reviews will play a crucial role. Those guys will be focusing on the complete project management and as well as a delivery activities. Okay, whether the project is up to the mark or not, or how exactly we are dealing with it. Everything, if we are focusing on that, we treat it as an management reviews. These are all the various types of reviews which we have. Okay, the static testing will deal about a reviews plus walkthrough. Okay, the static testing will deal about a review and as well as a walkthrough. Whereas, let's see the validation. Whether the developed product is right or not. Whatever the product, whatever the software application we have developed, whether the developed software application is right or wrong. Okay, once after this development is completed, if you are cross-checking whether what we have done is right or wrong, we treat it as a validation. Okay, we treat it as a validation. Usually this validation will be conducted by the developers and as well as the testers. Both the developers and as well as the testers will do this validation. Okay, whatever the validation these developers are doing, we call it as a white box testing, and whatever the validation testers are doing, we call it as a black box testing. So let us see in detail about this white box testing and a black box testing with some examples as part of our sessions. So white box testing, testing conducted on the source code by the developers to ensure 100% code coverage. So if at all you are doing this round of a testing, okay, to verify whether they have a covered a complete code or not, this will be done by the developers on their source code. Whatever the code they have created, if they are verifying whether they have completed the complete coverage of that code or not, for a requirement whether they have completed or not, if they are cross-checking this whole thing, we call it as a white box testing. So who will be doing this white box testing? Developers are the resources who will be playing a crucial role on this white box testing. Okay, so this white box testing is a combination of unit testing and as well as an integration testing. The combination of a unit testing and as well as an integration testing, we call it as a white box testing. Okay, if you are doing a unit and as well as an integration, the whole chunk, we call it as a white box testing. Then immediately a quick question will rise in our mind. What is a unit testing and what exactly the integration testing is? Even we should know, na? So what is an unit testing and what exactly an integration testing? We should know basically. Unit testing means testing conducted on the smallest separatable portion of a code. So developer has written some code base. If you are doing a testing on a smallest separatable portion in a code, very small chunks of a code base, we call that particular testing as a unit testing. In an application, there are multiple units are there. If you conduct a testing on all those units, we call it as a unit testing. Perfect. Then the integration testing. So what exactly the integration testing is? If testing conducted on the complete integrated module, or once all the units were merged, and if we are testing it, we call it as an integration testing. So in the integration testing, you will be doing a round of testing on a complete integration. So individual modules, you will club it and we will see the data is transferring between the modules or not. If you are cross-checking that complete information, we call it as an integration testing. Okay, we call it as an integration testing. Perfect. Done the deal. Any questions for me on this, or you are good so far, guys? Unit testing and as well as an integration testing. Everyone?
Yeah, I'm good.
Deepa, Gayatri, Raj, any questions?
So, could you please explain again integration testing?
Yeah, sure. So one thing is basically you have a, see this one. Let me show you this website. So unit means if you consider this search functionality, this is a small portion. And if you consider the courses, it's a small portion. Corporate training, it's a small portion. Become a trainer as a small portion. There are a multiple small chunks are there here in the entire application. The code, with respect to the code, if you merge all the code into a single unit, the complete code will cover. And if you are verifying whether that particular code is working or not, the whole chunk of code is working or not, we call it as an integration testing. If you do the testing on a smallest separatable portions of a code, we call it as a unit testing. If you do a code verification or a coverage on a complete code base, we call it as an integration testing. Got it? This integration and a unit testing are related to the developers itself. Am I clear for you all?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, got
So
it.
this is all about a white box testing. Then what is a black box testing? Testing conducted on the application. So testing conducted on the software application by the testers to ensure 100% requirement coverage. If there is a requirement coverage, and if we as a testers are doing that particular coverage check, so it means customer asked us for a particular requirement, whether that requirement got a fulfilled or not. If you are doing that particular activity, we treat it as a black box testing. So where are we doing our black box testing? On a software application. See, examples for a software application is a Gmail, Yahoo Mail, Facebook. These are all the various kinds of a software applications. All these software applications you are accessing using their URLs, gmail.com, facebook.com, yahoo.com. These are the various URLs which you are accessing any kind of a software application. The ultimate point here is whenever a tester is conducting testing on any application, even they will be accessing the application using certain URLs defined for them in that organization. So in that particular project, they will give you a URL. So buddy, this is what your URL for this particular application, you need to test it. So you will test on that particular URL. So there are a different sets of URLs are there that we will study moving ahead, not at this particular point which we will study. Moving ahead itself, we are going to study that concept. Okay, but the ultimate point is we will be verifying these URLs itself. The application we are going to verify with the various URLs. That chunk we call it as a, okay, that chunk we call it as a black box testing. Okay, so the ultimate point is if you are testing the application with the various inputs and verifying whether the customer requirements got satisfied or not. The ultimate objective of our software black box testing is to check whether the customer requirements were met or not. If the customer requirements were met, then it's perfectly fine. If the customer requirements were not met, then it's not, a valid case where we will be logging down the various sets of issues in that situation. Okay, so but the ultimate point out over here is a black box testing means testing conducted on the application by the testers to ensure 100% requirement coverage. If there is a requirement and if you want to check whether the customer requirement got satisfied or not, we as a testers will do a black box testing. And on top of this, the black box testing, black box testing is a combination of system testing plus user acceptance testing. Okay, this black box testing is a combination of system testing and as well as an user acceptance testing. Okay, so what exactly the system means? Entire application. There's a whole application we treat it as a system, guys. Okay, this whole application we treat it as a system. If you are doing a round of a testing on that particular system, we call it as a system testing. Okay, we call that particular testing as a system testing. Whereas a user acceptance testing, once we deliver the application to the customer, if customer is doing a round of a check from his end to see whether to accept the application or whether to reject that particular application, we call this a whole chunk as a user acceptance testing. This user acceptance testing will be conducted by customer, and this system testing will be conducted by our testers. Okay, we will be doing this one. And in some organizations, they will ask us to do user acceptance testing also. That falls under a different category, which we will see moving ahead. Not at this particular point, the user acceptance testing criteria and other things that we will see moving ahead, not at this particular point. Got it, guys? Any questions on this? Perfect. So then what is the system testing? As I told you that if we are testing entire application under test, whatever the components are there, if we are testing each and every component in the application and validating it, we call it as a system testing, and the user acceptance testing will be conducted by an end user. Gets done the deal. So this is all about the system testing and as well as an user acceptance testing. So guys, let me take a pause here for LC. So the concept which we are studying right now is STLC, which is a software testing lifecycle. If at all you want to develop a particular software, what are all the various stages involved that falls under a software development lifecycle, right? SDLC. If we want to develop an application, all the stages we have seen, like gathering of requirements, the planning, designing and development, delivery and maintenance, in middle testing is there, all these things, right? So if at all we got any application for testing, so what are all the various stages involved for any application to test it? We call it as a testing life cycle, which is a software testing life cycle. So the software testing life cycle has a multiple phases like a test planning, test analysis, test design, execution, and a test closure. So these activities are related to only testing, guys. Planning, analysis, design, execution, and a closure. All these testing activities, all these activities are related to testing itself. Then, as part of today's session, let's see a high-level overview on what exactly the individual phases does. As part of this planning, either the manager or a leads will play a major role. Test manager and a test lead will play a major role as part of this planning phase. They will prepare a high level and a detailed plan and approach for testing the application. So as part of this planning phase, those guys will prepare a detailed plan and approach of testing the application. If we have something, we should be having a proper plan, right? So as part of this planning phase, they will list all those things. What comes under this planning phase? An example is, assume that this is what our application is, and this is what we are developing. And I told you that, buddy, I'm not developing contact us and pay now functionalities. These two features we are not developing. If at all we are not developing, is there any point for you guys to test those features? No point, right? If I am not developing, what you will test in that particular features? So that's the reason here, as part of this planning phase, first we will prepare features to be tested and features not to be tested. Okay, we will prepare a list out over there. In the entire application, these are all the only features that I want to test. These are all the features that I'm not going to test. We just need to prepare that features breakdown here as part of this planning phase. Not only this one, additionally, we will say that how many resources are working in a project, what are all their designations, and all these details we will be discussing in the planning phase itself, right? So additionally, what we will be considering as part of this planning means, so okay, the functionalities to be tested and functionalities not to be tested, followed by resources, work schedule, and all other chunk will be prepared as part of this planning. Good. And once we have a planning, the next phase is an analysis phase. In this analysis phase, okay, what we will do means we will try to understand more about the customer and application too, and their requirements. Why? What it will happen if we don't understand about a customer? If I don't know anything about a customer, what it will happen? If I didn't understand more about the customer business line, what it will happen? A simple example is, assume that Apple is launching iPhone 14 Pro Max mobile next month, and I want to purchase a mobile. Before purchasing the mobile, I will do a round of analysis on that. What are all the features they are offering? What are all the best features they have when compared to any other competitors in the mobile? All these things I will compare, and then I decide that, okay, because of these advantages, it's good for me to purchase this iPhone Pro 14 Pro Max. And once I purchase that mobile, I will use those features. For suppose, if I don't know anything about the features available in iPhone 14 Pro Max, okay, I can simply use that mobile only for dialing and only for a receiving purpose itself. I will just give a ring and I will just get an incoming call for that. Though I purchased a mobile worth at 1,250 dollars, I just use it for calling and a receiving functionality if I don't know the advantages of all those things. The similar way, as a tester, whenever you are testing the application, if you know more about the customer, if you know more about their business need, if you know more about the application, then you can test the application in an effective way. For that reason, you guys need to do a round of analysis on the application, and you should understand more about that particular application. And then the next phase is a design phase. In the design phase, we will prepare certain test cases. Okay, we will prepare certain test cases and we will verify whether, okay, we have a covered test cases for the requirements or not. The test cases means what to test and how to test. As part of a manual testing, this test cases is the most important chunk for us, which we need to focus on, that we need to look into. The design phase, the test cases design, that we will see moving further. Anyways, the individual phases we will see moving further with an examples. and finally execution. So once after developer confirm that, buddy, I'm done with the development, then we will jump on to the execution phase. We will jump on to the execution phase and we will start executing our test cases. Okay, we will start executing our test cases. And finally, the closure phase. This closure phase will come at the end, where in which, okay, as part of this closure phase, okay, we will be verifying whether, okay, whether what are all the documents we have prepared in a testing phase. Everything we will share it with the customer. What are all the documents and things you have prepared as part of a testing? We will share the whole information with the customer as part of this closure phase, guys. Done the deal. Any questions for me on this closure so far, everyone? Perfect. Done the deal. This is an overview about a software testing lifecycle. In detail about this software testing lifecycle, let us start from the next session, guys. Yeah. We have seen STLC in the previous session. It means once we got any application for testing, what are all the various stages we need to pass on? We have seen in the yesterday's session. So in continuation with that, what we need to do is, if at all, we just want to deal with this, okay, if at all we want to work on this black box testing, we know that black box testing is a combination of a system testing plus user acceptance testing. Right. So here, one more testing definition that we need to consider, which is exhaustive testing. So what is the definition of this exhaustive testing? Let me tell you with a small example. So assume that I went to a bookstall to purchase Ramayana, which is of 10,000 pages. This book contains 10,000 pages and I want to purchase that particular book. And before purchasing the book, I want to check the printing quality of that book. So the first option is sit for 30 days in a bookstall and guarantee 100% quality. Randomly open few pages for 3 minutes and then certify the quality for about 95% of accuracy. So which option you prefer in the real world, guys? The first option or the second option? Usually we will go with the second option. We will not sit in a bookstall for about 30 days and to check the printing quality of a one particular book. So randomly we will open 3 pages and check the quality of that. Okay, randomly you will open the 3 pages and then you can check the quality on top of it. Right. So the ultimate point out over here is in the second approach, there is a 5% of a risk that the quality may not be good, but still you are accepting it. Right. But still you are accepting that particular 5% of a risk. What this exhaustive testing is saying is testing each and every possible combinations which is not possible in the real world. It's saying that you need to test each and every possible combination, but that is not at all possible for us to do this activity. Okay, that is not possible to complete that particular activity. So this whole thing, we call it as an exhaustive testing, and we know that it's not at all possible to do that. See, if at all you want to purchase a book, and if you want to sit for a 30 days in a bookstall, will those guys accept it? They will not accept it, right? So it means even there is a possibility from their end also to deny that. Exhaustive testing is saying that you need to test everything, and it's also saying that it's tough for you to do this exhaustive testing. Then what we need to do as how we have chosen one technique to check the printing quality the same way. Okay, the same way we need to utilize all the black box testing techniques to verify the application. Say a simple point that I need to convey here basically why we are using the techniques in anything in a real world. If assume that if a person is doing a work, okay, for about 10 hours, and if we place a small technique for him, the same 10 hours of work, he can complete it in a 2 hours. So techniques are used to reduce the effort, whatever you are spending on a particular work. Okay, so whatever the effort you are spending in order to reduce that particular effort, we are using these techniques. Okay, good enough. And then the next point here is we have few techniques in black box testing, which we need to consider. Okay, fine. So let us see the techniques, whatever we have in a black box testing. So 1 second. So let me open up these techniques. Before going on to these techniques, there is one more small example of the application that we need to consider, and then we will jump on to these techniques. So assume that this is the application that we have developed as part of our organization. Okay, so this is the application we developed within our organization, guys. This is the app we as an organization developed. How this application will work: if you are entering any numbers from 0 to 9, successfully entered a numbers message should display. If you are entering anything from small j to small z, successfully entered lowercase message should display. Capital A to capital Z, successfully entered uppercase message should display. Special characters are not allowed into this field. Like this, we have a requirement for this application. In order to check this one, you need to enter 0 to 9. So which is 10 times you need to enter. Small j to small z, you need to enter 26 times. Capital A to capital Z, you need to enter 26 times. And maybe the special characters, you need to enter 30 times. Altogether, in order to test the field, you need to enter 100 times, and roughly 3 to 4 hours of time is required for us to complete this task. Okay, roughly 3 to 4 hours of time is required for us in order to complete this task, which is not at all possible for us to do these activities for such a long time. That's the reason we will use techniques in place. Okay, so we will use techniques in place. Okay, good enough. Any questions so far?
No,
No.
I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm fine too.
Okay. Okay, good. Done the deal. So the first technique that we have in a black box testing is equivalence class partition technique. So what does this equivalence class partition will do? This equivalence class partition is saying that if you are dealing with the multiple sets of data, if at all you are dealing with these multiple sets of data, in such situations, okay, in such situations, okay, identify data in groups and I make sure that each group will give you same output. Okay, how you need to identify the data as part of a group? Every group you should get a same output. In such a way, we need to create a data. We need to identify the data in that form of a groups. And instead of a testing application with all the values in the group, just pick one value and test it. So what this technique is saying is, you have identified a data in a group now. So as you have already identified a data in the form of a group, then no need to test the fields with all those values. Just pick one value and check whether you were able to identify that information or not, whether it is working with the only one set of data or not. Just identify that. This whole process, we call it as an equivalence class partition. As part of the above technique in an equivalence class partition, if you see this above example, instead of a testing on all the 10 combinations between 0 to 9, you will be picking up a 5 value. And instead of a testing with all the combinations 26, I'm picking M. Instead of a testing all the combinations, I am testing with a M. And all the special characters I'm placing 1 or 2. So it means earlier I was supposed to test it with 100 fields which need a 3 to 4 hours of time. And now I'm checking with a 5 values which need a 30 minutes of time for me to complete this activity. This whole process, we call it as an black box testing technique, which is an equivalence class partition. Is this point clear for you, first of all, guys? Deepa and Gayatri, the equivalence
Yeah,
class
yeah, yeah.
partition?
Yeah.
Fine, done the deal. Then the next technique we have is a boundary value analysis. What this technique is saying is, if your application is dealing with any condition specific stuff, in such situations, use my technique. What is an example for that? Assume that for the Gmail account creation, the condition they have is, if a person is greater than 18 years, then only he can create an account with the Gmail. Else he can't create any account with the Gmails, right? The person should be having a greater than or equal to 18 years. Then only he can create an account. Right. The same way here, what it's going to happen is in this boundary value analysis, if at all, there you have this kind of a criterias, then the condition is 18 years. So the application should not work for the people whose age is less than or equal to 18 years, and it should work for the people only greater than 18 years. We need to test it. So test that particular application with, okay, test that particular application with the 17, and then test that application with the 18 and 19 or some greater values, and verify how it's going to work. That's it. Okay, good. Good enough. Done the deal. And then this is what about the boundary value analysis does. So the boundary value analysis, what it is saying is, if your application is having certain boundary conditions, then check the application with that boundary value -1 at that boundary value, and again boundary value +1, and observe the application. Okay, and observe the application. This is what we need to do. Okay, this is what we need to do as part of this boundary value analysis. Good. And then the next point that we need to consider is, once we are done with this boundary value analysis, so I will tell you one more small example on a boundary value analysis for a better understanding. Assume that you want to build an app for personal loan. Personal loan Hyderabad.com. This is what the app that we want to build. Okay, so as whenever you want to build this particular app, okay, whenever you want to build this particular app, personal loan Hyderabad.com, you did a survey in Hyderabad and you noticed that 95% of the people who are staying in this city are having 10,000 salary, and 4% of the people are having a salary of greater than 10,000, and 1% of the people are having a salary less than 10,000. So what you have decided, you have decided to go with this 95% of the people and this 4% of the people. So your requirement is, if a person's salary is greater than or equal to 10,000, you can apply for the loans. Okay, if a person's salary is greater than or equal to 10,000, then only he can apply for a loan in our portal. That's what your requirement is. So what we need to do here, our organization will develop an application, and while developing the application, they may miss this equal to. So if they miss this equal to, 95% of the people were not able to use this application. That's the reason we as a tester will test the application at a boundary condition -1 at the boundary value, and a boundary condition +1. We need to check the field and then we will be verifying that particular thing. Okay, so we will be verifying that a whole chunk. Okay, good enough. Good enough. Any questions on this particular boundary value analysis?
I didn't get what is that the
No.
-1 boundary value.
See, the thing
Boundary
is,
value.
see, they have given a requirement for you stating that if there is salary is greater than or equal to 10,000, your application should allow them to create a loan form, right? So 10,000 is a boundary value for you. They have given a condition that. So if a person's salary is a 9,999, will they apply loans in your portal, or they can't apply loans?
They can't.
They can't apply loans. So you need to pass on 9,999. So -1. So it means they have a given boundary value as a 10,000. 10,000 -1, which is a 9,999, and check whether the application is working or not. It shouldn't work. And a boundary value at a 10,000. At 10,000, will it work or not? They want 95% of the people are having a salary as a 10,000. So it should work. right?
Yeah.
You will check whether
Yes.
it is working or not, which is a boundary value. And then it should work for the people whose salary is greater than 10,000. So I will give 10,001 and I will check
Mhm.
whether it is working or not. It will work. So this is the thing.
Okay. Okay. Now I got it.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Any questions for you both? What is this boundary value analysis? Good.
We have
Done the deal. And once we are done with this boundary value analysis, the next one is a decision table analysis. So what this decision table analysis does? So this will follow the Boolean condition. So A, B, and A and B. So earlier, maybe in our education, we have studied if a is a true, B is a true, A and B is a true. If any one of these values is a false, the outcome of these A and B is a false. That's what we have studied, right? If any one of these things is a false, the outcome of this particular thing is a false itself. Okay, the same way we use this thing in our regular testing world also. Okay, good. So here the next point is how we need to consider this decision table analysis. A simple example is consider that A is an username field, B is a password field, and username and a password which is a login status. If username is the correct, password is the correct, login is a success. Okay. If username is correct, password is a invalid, login is a fail. Okay, login is a fail. Done the deal. And then if username is a invalid and password is invalid, the login status is a fail. If username is invalid, a password is invalid, even the login is a fail. So if you clearly observe the combinations, whatever we have, guys, how we have implemented this Boolean, the similar way these conditions, the login status is also working. This whole login is also working for me. Okay. This whole login is also working for me. Okay. Good. Done the deal. And then the next point is while testing the application, you need to check all these combinations and you need to see this tells the decision value analysis. Okay, decision table analysis. What the decision table analysis is stating for us, if at all your application is dealing with these Boolean or these kind of fields are there in your application, check these values and see whether the application is responding or not in these situations. Okay, good. Any questions, guys?
No.
Good. Done the deal. And then once we are done it, the state transaction analysis. So what exactly this state transaction analysis does? So there are two more techniques, the state transaction analysis and the use case analysis. Both almost conveys the same thing. What they are saying means whether the application is changing its state or not. If you click on something, whether the application is moving to the next appropriate screen or not, this thing is the same. An example for this one is, let me show you a simple example so that you guys can easily understand. So this is what a simple website which is a Lucky Trainings. Okay. On this particular website, so if you click on a corporate training, what it should do is static page. It should redirect the corporate training page. It should redirect. Whether it is redirecting or not, we are considering this one as a state transaction testing or a use case analysis. The ultimate objective of these two is whether the application is moving its state to the next appropriate screen or not. We call it as a state transaction analysis or a use case analysis. Another small example for this one is, assume that you have an ATM card with you and you inserted your ATM card in a machine. User action is inserting card into a machine. What is the system response? What exactly the system response is? The system responds with your selection. So buddy, select something. So that's what your system will respond. If you select that cash with the ATM will respond with some other option. So the point out over here is, based on your action, the system is dealing with an appropriate response. We call that particular thing as, okay, we call that particular thing as this state transaction technique. Okay, good. Good enough. Any questions? Perfect. Done the deal. So these are the various kinds of techniques, whatever we have in our black box testing. Okay,
So,
good.
so ST and UCA both are same, right?
Both are
State.
conveying the same thing. Yes, those
Oh.
are two different techniques, but the bottom
Mhm.
line is, if you click on something, you are getting response on the application or not, checking that. Okay,
Okay.
if you click on something, see, basically something,
Mhm.
for suppose if you see here, I'm on this application home screen. So
Mhm.
if I click on a courses, what would be our objective? The various courses offered should display there, right?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
are we navigating to the courses screen or not? You need to check it out. So
Okay.
clicking on courses may navigate to some other page which is not as per our requirement. So as these are two techniques, what they are saying means it should work and it should navigate to the appropriate screen. For suppose if you click on a courses, just an example, okay, and if it is opening this screen, then it's not a valid thing. It's an issue. You need to raise a issue to the developer, defect to the developer. Got it?
Mhm.
If you click on a courses and if it is opening this various list of courses here, then we can treat it as this as an appropriate screen.
Okay.
Got it?
Mhm. Yeah.
Perfect. Any questions on this one?
No, no.
Good enough. So these are the various types of techniques, whatever we have in our black box testing. Okay, and of course this is the certificate even you guys will get at the end of the training program. Okay, yeah, cool, done the deal. So this is all about the black box testing techniques. So let us continue the topic in the next session.